All right, we'll get started here right out of the gate. So, hey, welcome everybody. So excited that you're here with our distancing together, the concept where we can be apart, but yet still come together. Set this up at 8 o'clock so the youngsters can be to bed and you kind of have a chance to just chillax a little bit if you have a beverage of choice. I happen to have water with me right now, but whatever you have that works, that's great. And I'm going to just say, let's see. First of all, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A. We'll get to a spot. We'll see if there's a chance. It depends on the number of people and what we're chatting about and stuff, where we can have people chime in as well if you'd like to ask some questions. But we're going to start out with Q&A mostly because of the number of people. I saw there was already a Q&A about chatting. So yes, we'll do some chatting in there. And I'm just going to get to it quickly here. We have our friends here from PowerNotes. And so we do have Jimmy and Kyle and Wilson who have graciously joined us. I really love this product and I think it has a lot of possibilities. I've been teaching since 1986, and so I'm always looking for ways that I can help my students to get in a situation where my students can learn more or I can do less. And anytime I can do less work and my students can learn more, that's my favorite. And PowerNotes kind of has that option there. So I'm going to turn it over to, I'm not sure which one will kick it off here, but Kyle's going to just say hey and introduce yourselves quickly.
Yes, thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening, afternoon, wherever you are, which part of the country. Todd, Catherine, we really do appreciate it. My name is Kyle, as you can see, and also I'm joined by my colleague, Jimmy Fleming. Also by phone, who you cannot see, is Wilson Su, who's the founder and CEO of PowerNotes. You know, as a growing ed tech company, we are constantly seeking, which community should we get involved with? Which groups should we associate our names with? And we do a lot of hands-on work with faculty members, and one common thing that we've always heard over the past few years is get involved with the ITLC folks. So I've been excited to kind of been speaking with Catherine and Melanie over the past few months now. We're excited to kind of launch this kind of partnership and see where it goes. And we're very excited to be here tonight. Wilson, as I mentioned, is the founder and CEO of PowerNotes. And I'm going to let him kind of give a quick introduction because it kind of leads into kind of who we are as a company, what we do, and how we can help out some students and instructors.
Thank you, Kyle. Hi, everyone. My name is Wilson Su. Sorry, I can't join by video. It's 7 o'clock here in Chicago, and I got a bunch of little kids running around, and so I don't want you to see that when it happens because I can't really control them when I'm doing this. So Kyle's going to be walking you through the demo. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the company, just so you have some context for why we think this product should exist. So it really comes about based on my own personal experience with research and writing. When I was in grad school in the mid-2000s, I was in law school. There was obviously a lot of research and writing in the curriculum. And I had an experience where all of the research and writing was kind of new to me because it was the first time I had done it in the digital environment. So contrasted with my experience in undergrad, which is about 10 years prior to that, in the early 90s, where all of my research and writing was done in print. And so having kind of made that transition, I noticed a lot of differences in how the little processes that went around research and writing kind of came about or taught to you, or you had to figure them out on your own. And so my experience was in the print days in high school and when I was in undergrad, a lot of the research processes around doing print research was taught to me. So I was taught to go to the library, find my sources. If I wanted to use sources for later on when I was writing my paper, I had to transcribe materials from those sources. I was taught to do it onto note cards because that would facilitate steps later on in the process when it came to organizing and reorganizing my information so that I could start writing my paper. And I really enjoyed that process. That worked for me. It kept me organized, kept my paper flowing logically. Now, fast forward about 10 years, now it's the mid-2000s, and all my sources were now digital. in law school. And so one of the first things right off the bat is that my entire process for doing research and writing that I learned in undergrad kind of went out the window. No one transcribed anything. People use digital means to capture information. No one actually taught me what to do. I think a lot of people kind of assume that students of a certain age know how to save information from online sources, how to organize it, how to track it. While I think that's kind of true, I don't think they know how to do it well, and I don't think they know how to do it effectively, because we all kind of came up with our own ad hoc process of doing that. Most of the grad students came up with processes that required copying and pasting materials from your browser into another document. That had a whole suite of problems that I didn't like. Every time you wanted to save something, you had to stop your reading, leave your source, copy and paste something into another document. That was just a very distracting process that prevented me from reading continuously. I think the worst part of it was, as I copy and pasted material into that other document just grew and grew and grew and became unruly. It was disorganized. And when I wanted to then assess the research that I'd done, it was then very difficult for me to then reorganize my information, because that's just not what word processors were designed to do. They're designed to let you type out information, record things, but if you want to reorganize, you're stuck copy and pasting stuff around within the document or into another document, which is very cumbersome. A lot of students, myself included in the beginning, just started writing. They didn't know what to do with that document, and that led to a lot of stream of consciousness, disorganized writing. All of this is kind of what we're trying to avoid with PowerNotes. We start in the beginning. We start with a process that makes it really easy for you to gather, organize, and track your research material all in kind of one step, right up front on top in your browser, and Kyle will show you how we do this. And then there's a back end that really allows you to reorganize all of that information in a much more user-friendly way, kind of really promote that in the digital space. And we use a lot of the techniques that we learned, that we were taught in the print days to try to do that. And so PowerNotes has been around now for a few years. We started it in 2016, started launching it and partnering with law schools in 2017. In 2018 is when we started partnering with undergrad institutions. We're in about 40 institutions right now, and we're really starting to grow and trying to expand our reach as we build a product that has become much more of a full set of tools for that research to writing process. So with that said, one of the things that we are doing is really working with a lot of our partner institutions to build additional features that are really focused on improving the in-class teaching experience. So not just research tools for students and users, but also tools to help professors teach students how to analyze, synthesize information, how to share information and get early feedback, those sorts of things. And those are the things that we're going to continue to do as we work with more and more institutions. So, when you're looking at the demo, always kind of keep that in your head. We're always going to be looking to suggestions on how to build a better product, and we actually listen to our partner institutions. So with that said, Kyle's going to jump into a demo, and I'll be on to answer any questions, but I'm going to mute because I've had a good stretch of no kids, and I'm going to keep it that way.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Wilson.
Kyle, a quick demo. What are we looking at here?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to be the person kind of pointing to some of the tools here, but as Wilson mentioned at the very end, we try to work really as a true partnership with our partner schools and the faculty specifically, because PowerNotes is used hands-on with students and by instructors. My colleague Jimmy is actually going to point to and potentially answer some questions that relate to how it could be used within a specific assignment, or how it could be used within the curriculum. And he can also answer some questions on why we have things set up the way we do. So please, with that being said, ask us some questions, provide some feedback. We're happy to make it more conversational. There are plenty bells and whistles to the tool, but we want to show you some core things, but make it enjoyable and beneficial for everyone, because we understand and we applaud all educators in everything that you've done to keep students moving forward, from higher education down to, I know my family and Jimmy's family. We have K through 12 teachers. that are close to us, and they've done some pretty extraordinary things in a short amount of time with limited resources. So we do want to applaud you for that. And we hope in some way, shape, or form that PowerNotes might be able to become something that can be beneficial as well. So let me go ahead and get to here, share. Okay, so I am sharing my screen here. And this is a screen that many students see, kind of a small snippet of that, but we have multiple tabs open. I'm conducting some reading across some articles. I'm in the open web. I'm in some academic databases. And this is something that's very familiar. What we would like to do is, with PowerNotes, is provide the students with a centralized location to gather, organize, and track everything. So whether they are starting the early stages of a research project, a writing assignment, maybe building a study guide, or just sorting through digital sources to find out what's important, we want to make sure that they can stay within their sources, have a centralized location to track it all, to organize it all, even facilitate reorganization, and remember where everything is at. So you can see on the right-hand side that we have this sidebar here. This is one of the locations where we're going to track everything. Up at the top, I'm going to do a little honeybee research, something that kind of personally interests me. So I always have some articles open. I'm reading through it. And this sidebar is where you're going to see your project progress. So once again, that research or study guide that you're building, it'll be progressing in this sidebar. So the first thing that you'll see with PowerNotes is it is a browser extension. The first part, we chose a browser extension to have it overlay any digital source. So academic databases, open web, LMS, you name it. So the first thing, if I come across a piece of a passage that I would like to save, all I would have to do is highlight. From there, you're going to see the organizational structure that is mirrored within the sidebar pop up, and it's going to do so right at your line of sight. So right from the get-go, we're going to start to organize what we are saving. We prompt students with these two generic topics because we don't know what they're going to be writing about. Students can easily go in beforehand and build out the framework of what they should look for, or they can build it as they go. So I can place that right into my background topic. From there, we're going to prompt students to annotate. This is an area that's very difficult to do within the digital setting. I know personally, me as a graduate student, I would copy and paste things into a word processing document, and I would, in bold or in some other different text, I would paraphrase, summarize, annotate what I was highlighting, and I would have to do it in a different text to make sure that I knew I could differentiate between the two. And then I would try to copy the link before that. So here I can do all of my annotations, notes, anything that you would like to pair with that text, and it'll be paired together in the sidebar along with the source. As Wilson mentioned, going back to that pre-digital source when things were done via hand transcribed note cards. And you can keep reading. So I'm staying within my source. I'm not leaving. I'm not going to copy and paste. I can find whatever I need. I can easily add a new topic. Say call it pollination, place that within there, and summarize as I feel fit. And you can see it syncs over to the sidebar. And this is going to follow me everywhere I go. So if I go to the open web, find something else that is useful. As you can see, I'm going fast here so we can have time for questions and things like that. But I think you'll get the point. Add it there, take my notes, and keep on reading. In the sidebar, a couple other things that we can help customize. We can easily change the names of this. We could easily add our own thoughts into the sidebar with this plus sign here. They're located next to each topic. So whether this is maybe an interview quote, maybe a question for the instructor, anything can be added into this sidebar here. Now I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to let Jimmy jump in to kind of summarize why we have some of these features the way that we do, or if you want to add any additional thoughts. And Jimmy, you are muted, FYI. I think Todd, there you go.
It took me a moment to realize that. The main thing I want to just add here too is that, and we were talking about this, Todd, at the outset of the conversation, when Kyle did his first highlight and the annotation bar popped up, And that's, of course, a teaching moment. That's something that instructors at certain levels, at certain kinds of courses might want to take the opportunity to teach their students some of the rhetorical skills that they'll be working on during the course, very likely in the first year writing course or sequence. So even though that blank field is there for the student to engage directly with the text, it could be the place where she begins to practice summary, or begins to practice paraphrasing, or begins to practice other tools that are going to be rhetorical in nature. So we're trying to keep the student directly engaged with the text at the moment where she's doing this reading, and not get distracted from the screen as well, so she can continue reading.
Thank you, Jimmy. I was answering a question in the chat there.
Yeah,
yes.
did you get that one from Nick?
From Nick. Yes, Nick. Actually, that's one thing I was going to point to here, and it's something that we continue to improve upon as we work with institutions. So next to each of these digital note cards that are built in there, they will always have three things. We'll always have our notes or annotations that you can always edit. You can always have what's highlighted that you cannot edit. And then you always have the source of where it came from. And these are live links, so you'll always be able to go back. And my reference to the partnering with institutions, we will integrate with your library's proxy servers, and we will, to ensure that the student can go directly back into whether it's EBSCO, JSTOR, etc.
Excellent. And I don't want to get you off the topic too much, but somebody had asked, and I was interested in this too. So does it export references in APA style or one of the more inferior styles?
So our current process here,
sorry, I'm a psychologist, so I have
that almost went over my head, and I caught it right here, and I was like, oh, okay, he was actually joking. Our current process for citations goes something like this. And, this goes back to our kind of conversation before everyone jumped on upon, we don't want to make this necessarily something that makes things easier for students. We still want creating the citation as part of the learning process. So we actually get mixed responses from librarians specifically on how this should look. So if you'll notice over here in the right-hand corner, right next to the link, you'll have a gray quotation icon. And when I click on that, you'll notice that it provides a field to place the citation. So our current process is students will need to use the APA, MLA, whatever citation format that is required for them to put that directly into their field there and save to sources. That will start a list of all the sources that you have used, and it actually works. You only have to do it once. So very early on, we want to get students in the habit of organizing, of annotating, of checking their sources. Because once we actually save it to our sources, you can edit it. So if I copy and paste it from, say, EBSCO or JSTOR into here, and it's not correct, I can make the appropriate edits. Once I save it to my sources, you'll notice that the gray has now turned green. So we're giving them a visual indicator that they've already gone in and double checked that everything is accurate. Now, with the open web, things are a little bit different because they don't provide the citations as the academic databases do. So what we do, we actually pull the fields that are appropriate. And we do this because we know that students are going to spend time going back and forth, copy and pasting the author, everything into their Word document, into a bibliography or a citation list that they're building. We're going to provide it for them. They can create the citation that they need. And then, of course, they can edit these except for date accessed to make sure that they're right. We even have a little disclaimer saying this is pulled from metadata. It's not always accurate. Go in there and check it. So we're getting students in the habit of doing that on early on in the process, because I was guilty of as a student. I'm sure a lot of us were. We would complete a research assignment and say, where did this come from? Or I had saved a link and we're trying to go back in and scramble to find the citation information. Now we can have it beforehand, and we even provide that visual indicator here. With that being said, like I mentioned earlier, we take citation steps kind of a little slowly because we don't want to over jump. We're going to take the feedback from our institutions and build them appropriately. In the future, we will have it a little bit more streamlined. And that citation list will be able to be exported at the end to an RIS file that can be used with a citation management tool. I hope that answered the question. And I'm gonna, some of the features, please ask like that. As you can tell, Jimmy and I really like to kind of talk about PowerNotes and everything that we're trying to accomplish. So, you know, for the sake of time, we'll try to skip ahead, but please ask us questions. We'll, you know, coordinate afterwards if there's any additional things to discuss.
We did have one question that just came
Yes.
in, and it says an RIS file question mark. So can you explain what that is?
Yeah, I used to know what the RIS stands for. I basically, to kind of summarize that, it is the middle file that is taken from our system and put into another system, and then a Zotero, a RefWorks would spit out the appropriate list. Once again, that's our current process. In the future, it's going to be a direct export, basically export to Zotero or export to RefWorks. Right now, you'd have to save the RIS file to your computer and put that into your citation management tool. And we'd be happy to discuss that at a different date if there would be interest in that. A couple more things just to point to over here. We have a bookmarking feature, which is great because it'll place the link directly within your project, and you can even annotate this so you know what's your why you're saving it. I'm sure all of us have saved bookmarks within our browser, and they get scattered, they get cluttered, you forget what to have them for. Right here, you can easily click the bookmarking toggle, put it directly into your project. It's saved there. You know what it's for. You can go back into it and find those specific areas. There was another question. Let me see if it's in. Thank you.
Did you get that one that just came in from Carrie that says, what does the citation list look like for those students that don't have a reference management tool?
So it will be, that'll be something I will show you. One of our exports is a word processing document, and it'll work with Microsoft Word or Google Docs. So as all of this information is exported, and that's kind of our goal to get students from this part of, you know, I'm gathering research, then helping with the reorganization phase, and then getting to the point where they can put themselves, you know, on a word processing document so they can, you know, complete the last half of their writing assignment. When they export it, all of the saved sources will go with them. So then it'll all be in the file or in the Word document right underneath their these note cards. So actually it'll go your own notes, annotations, the highlight. So what you have saved, the passage, a live link will be included in that Word document, and then underneath that will be the saved citation information. But if you were just looking to build a list, it would get, you'd have to use the RIS file. And I hope that answered it. Oh, stop my share there for a second. Jimmy, anything that you wanted to add in there at the, about citations, any of those questions that we just had?
Not at this moment. I'm actually watching something in the Q&A session that I'm trying to respond to too. So you covered the citation information. What we find interesting is that some of the people who are using PowerNotes and other tools, it's about 50-50 split of people who want us to create a citation generator and those who do not. And I suspect that in the future we will build that out, but it's not going to be the first thing on the to-do list.
Yeah, and I also saw a question in there about teaching moments, and this is the second part of PowerNotes is really where that becomes into play. The first part is facilitating those mechanical steps to help students kind of become more efficient, but also improve how they are comprehending text within digital sources. So if I were to finally get to a point where I want to export this, the first thing I'm going to do is click Project Outline, and it's going to put it or bring you to our web page. So this is where we can facilitate reorganization of the information. You can see here I have my assignment, I can have any information, I have all my topics, and this is where I can start to drag and drop things. I can move things around between different topics. As you can imagine, these projects become long, so I can move them long distances here. I can even copy it to a different project, something that I'm working on. I have a few examples from our partner schools in here as well. You can also add those freeform note cards as well. So you can start putting things like a topic sentence. Anything along those lines. We have our bookmark in here. As you can see, it's still formatted and we have our notes. So you can still always edit what we have highlighted, where it came from, and we have a few filter options. So before I get to my exports, I'm actually going to discuss a brand new feature that we actually just launched last month, and I'm going to switch over to a different project that has a little bit more content and I think can help you get an understanding of how this could be used from an instructor standpoint. So this assignment, I just kind of always gathering information. Please don't be grading it, all the teachers in the crowd, because some of it's kind of random and just put together for the sake of example. But as you can see, I have a lot of content here. Part of our most recent feature is sharing. So I can come in and I can actually take this project after I've, from the very beginning or at a certain point, say it's a time where I'm doing a peer or instructor review, and I can email it over to anyone that I would like. They would be able to see the same view and comment on any piece of information within the assignment. So instead of sending over a Word document and writing in the margins, I can come and say, and add a comment in here and start to provide feedback, my own thoughts, ensure that they're on the right track. They're interpreting the information correctly. I have the source right here. I have what they have highlighted right here, and I have what they have read or their annotations right there. As the viewer, so someone that has received this project, they cannot edit the information. They can only provide feedback on different pieces of research, the free-form note cards. So you can see can be conversations. One of our partner schools actually built this or requested this specifically, and we work with them because they do things like in-class peer review or even across their global campuses peer review assignments. And this would allow the students to share their different assignments, and they can complete these, whether it's in a classroom or, of course, across global campuses. You can always provide feedback as well on the entire project. One faculty member that we introduced this tool to described it as opening up what was previously a black box. Whereas you can use a Google Doc or a Word doc and send over a rough draft, but there was a lot of kind of uncertainty about what happened until that point. With PowerNotes, you can see what the student grabbed, how they're interpreting it, and make sure that they are on the right track. You can also do some things in here that you cannot do in any type of Word document. That is sorting. So as someone who's viewing this, I can actually take it, click sort by, and say sort by date. So I can see when all the work was completed. I can sort through here, I can collapse it. So now it's funny seeing some students see this and kind of cringe because they know they can no longer procrastinate because we have specific dates on when work was completed. And the instructor can, of course, expand it and provide comments this way as well. You can also sort by source. I think that was a question previously asked in the chat. This is how you would sort by source, so you can see a high-level overview. Here's what is used. You can have a checklist if you're the instructor that they need to use sources X, Y, and Z. Come in here, check them all. The numbers next to each source is simply the how many highlights are made or annotations are made from each source. You can expand and see what is being pulled from each source. See a couple questions coming in.
Yeah, I was gonna interrupt you for a second, Kyle. Do you have to be online the entire time you're doing this?
It has to be opened up in the browser, yes.
So you have to have an internet connection to be doing.
Let me qualify that.
Yes.
And I'm responding to this might be coming from the Q&A side as well, Catherine. But because the first part of it is a browser extension, the research part of it that is done online on the web. However, the web app side of it, once a student moves onto the project stage, the project outline stage, you can do that offline and with your another device as well.
Okay. And then the other question that I actually had myself too was, can you add images?
Images, oddly enough, is our project we're working on right now.
Gotcha.
I don't want to put a timeline on it. I think everyone who knows anything about technology it's just very unpredictable. It is our next feature that will roll out. We get a lot of requests from it, specifically from, say, STEM instructors, for example. We have a few pilots that would like to use it this coming fall. That is our goal, but we have not put a hard timeline on it. But yes, you will be able to capture images and they will come into the project just like this. You will see a condensed version and kind of a link to expand if you'd like, with the same ability to reorganize, comment on it if you're an instructor or a peer, and it'll flow with the same manner as the captured text.
Okay, so then what about other media such as videos?
I believe video will be our next, is the next step after images. I don't know if I can completely answer that one. Jimmy, do you know anything about video?
The video is going to be later this
Oh,
year.
here's
It's not going to be images now. We eventually will support audio and video, but we're going to work on LMS integrations before we do that. So it's going to be images, LMS integrations, maybe something else, but eventually we're also going to do videos and audio.
Yes. And I see a question from Nick about collaboration. That is a very big kind of hot topic for us. And we know in education right now, specifically because it's difficult to do remotely. That is the next step of kind of the, where we were going with the sharing feature. The first thing we wanted to do was be able to facilitate instructor and peer feedback, kind of one-on-one. The next step of this will be a centralized project where multiple parties can be actively in it, adding things to it, editing it. As Jimmy mentioned, I think earlier, students are very resourceful. I think everyone knows that, and there are a couple hacks that they currently do. We actually have a small blog post how we encourage students to do it safely with how PowerNotes works right now, and that would be creating a PowerNotes account. Anyone can create an account and do one free project, and they do that and they share credentials to do that group type collaborative project. With that said, we just encourage students to do it that way, so they're not sharing their own personal credentials. As far as the timeline goes, I cannot put one on there. Wilson, if you want to jump in about collaboration, feel free.
It'll be the summer.
Okay.
This summer.
Perfect. Let's see here, chat. Thank you. Alrighty. So along with sharing it, the entire project here, so the instructors and students can kind of work in this project web page. We also have exporting to Word documents and also spreadsheets. And I'm kind of going to speed through this just to make sure we have enough time at the end for any type of questions or closing comments. But as I mentioned earlier, when I open this up in a Word document, I've selected Word. You'll see, for example, here's how it will export. We have our annotation. In this case, I actually put a page number in there to remember where the page came, where it came from, what I've highlighted, where it came from. So this is still a live link. And here is the metadata that we have pulled. So that's how it will flow. If there was, let me see if I have an example of something I saved from an academic database that provided the, I don't think I do. If you had saved, say, APA with a source, it would be located right underneath there as well. With these other sources, I don't think or with these other highlights and annotations, I did not save a citation with that. That is why it is not paired. But that is how it will look within the Word document. And this is kind of was our first sharing feature. This is how students were exporting it, maybe even submitting this directly to the instructor, where we have plenty of white space for feedback or for the students to begin writing themselves. The feedback that we get from instructors is they love it because it's consistent. They get the same kind of format from their students, and they can easily click on the links to see directly where everything came from. And then we also have a Excel or spreadsheet. It can be with Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. And I'm actually going to let Jimmy take on this one. Jimmy, I know you're answering some questions in the chat there. Would you mind kind of jumping in and giving a kind of overview of our goal with this and how it came to be?
Okay, well, the project itself and the idea of doing a spreadsheet like this came to us from the University of Pennsylvania, where they had basically an assignment where they asked students to do this kind of synthesis and analysis in leading up to a lit review, and they did it in an Excel spreadsheet. And when they talked to us about it, it became easy for us to then format the exports, the things that students were collecting, in the format in which Penn was using it. And what's emerged since then has been a lot of recognition from other programs that they could in fact use the same setup to do a lit review or to do a deep dive into a rhetorical analysis. So what you see here is all of the sources that a student was working with, the topics that were arrayed across the first line. This is where those would appear. In the case of this example, this is actually a slightly different rhetorical analysis example, where the instructor has asked the students to read her essays, or the deep reading that she's doing, the academic research she's conducting, with these evaluative criteria in mind. So you see across the first line of relevance, authority, currency, appropriateness, and bias. Those actually appear then as the topics in the project outline. So when the student is doing her work with the 4 essays that are in the first column A, you'll see that when she finds evidence of relevance, she highlights it, makes comments on it, and appears in the cell. So going across the front line, you'll see that if a student were going all the way to the end of the columns, Penn then added in a column over at the very end for analysis. So the student then could look at this one essay, this teaching research article, and evaluate it and analyze it in the criteria that's been laid out across the first row. For the synthesis component, the student then would go to the bottom of each of the columns, bottom of the rows, the last row, where they've added a synthesis section, so that then the student would look at all 4 essays that she's currently reading and evaluate and regard and synthesize together with these criteria in mind. So synthesis along the bottom row and analysis over on the side. These criteria are not exactly what Penn uses, but it's something quite a bit like that. These are actually coming from Alice Horning. She gave us, who's an expert in teaching composition in the writing classroom. I'm sorry, teaching reading in the writing classroom. And she suggested these areas as evaluative criteria. And a lot of programs have told us this works perfectly for their synthesis assignment and for the lit review.
Yes. We have a handful of other spreadsheet exports with different formats. It's somewhat of an area where we can kind of customize it and build it to fit within something that you're currently doing. We just would rather try to facilitate it for you versus having you try to teach your students how to, use Excel and copy and paste everything in there before they even get to the learning part of their assignment. One question that just came through is, does the software have any mechanism for detecting fraudulent sources? I don't think at the moment, but that's kind of our goal on the front end with providing visibility into these assignments throughout their entirety. So from the very beginning, before a student even opens up a book, obviously it's their books open this way now, like a laptop. But before a student makes a first highlight, before they add anything into a research assignment, they can share that project with their instructor, with the librarian, with the tutor, and that person can consistently check in and get live updates and see how the project is progressing. So they can always check the sources, but as far as if a student would unknowingly use a fraudulent source, that would kind of just come down to that is not something that we would facilitate at this time. Could be. I've never actually heard that question. That's a good question. I hope that answered it. It's more of, we want to provide you the ability to kind of see into these assignments versus trying to be a detection on the back end. We want to be more of a preventer on the front end. So a question I just received: as a faculty member who is also a doctoral student, will you be discussing individual subscriptions, or is this product only through collaboration with an institution? So we are very flexible with how we can work with schools. Actually, if you are a member of the ITLC, and we can talk about this later as well, we are offering free yearly subscriptions to PowerNotes for an individual license. We work with institutions on several different pricing models. Right now, we're not even thinking about cost. We're thinking about supporting students and instructors. So a lot of things we're doing is for free. But with that being said, we do have to make money eventually. So we are very flexible with how we can do that, whether it's a student pay model. We have partnerships where they can purchase it through the bookstore. We also have institutional models as well. Anything that we can fit in with what works, because we understand with current circumstances, budgets are non-existent, and it's very difficult to come by money, but we want to find a way to work with you. And if that means offering it for free for the first X amount of time, we are more than happy to do that. One last thing I mentioned, or I would like to mention before we have kind of some closing thoughts here, I know we're getting close to the end, is a feature that helps students on the front end when they come across a source that may not have a text layer, so they cannot highlight. This is something that we built in collaboration with some partner librarians. If a student comes across a source that was scanned in, it does not have a text layer, PowerNotes will recognize it, will prompt the students to download it. The student can then open the document back up and begin to highlight. We will OCR it on our servers, and this process is kind of built in. It takes about 30 to 90 seconds or so to complete, and students can then save that document to their computer, and the highlighting, it'll be OCR'd for good, so it's not exclusive to the PowerNotes tool. That's something I always forget about it, but it's such a huge tool, because I know me personally, I would come across a source as a student and be very upset if I had to transcribe large pieces of text. Jimmy, anything that you wanted to add on to in kind of closing, as far as the project outline page? What can be done here from an instructor standpoint, how it could be used, maybe how some schools are using it? Any closing thoughts?
Well, the question came up in the Q&A session too. The project outline stage, probably the most commanding feature is our newest feature, and that is the commenting sharing function. This means that a teacher can engage with a student directly and early in the research process. This is also an opportunity they can begin to set up some peer activity so that students can work with each other. Coming down the road will be the opportunity to collaborate. This came up in the Q&A channel. And the sharing and commenting feature is a step in that direction. It's also a place where teachers who are looking to, again, I'm thinking of early in a student's career, where teachers are beginning to teach the processes of summary and synthesis and that kind of thing. The teacher can look very closely at the excerpt that the student has extracted and plans to use, and then her example of notes would be the place where she could view what the student has done as an exercise in paraphrasing or summary or something like that. So there's a teachable moment right there in the project stage as well, the project outline stage as well. And that came up in the question regarding some other teachable moments. And I jumped ahead of you, Kyle. I know that we're at the sort of the tail end of this, and everyone, I just put in the chat channel both Kyle and my email addresses. So any questions that we did not address, or if you have questions about getting a pilot or a free access to it for the graduate students, you can contact us and we can make that happen.
That's very nice of you. Thank you. Well, we are coming up close to the end here, because I promise it to be 45 minutes to kind of allow people to not be here too long. We've got, if there's any chat or a Q&A, somebody wants to ask something quickly, we could hang out for a minute or two, but I want to be respectful of people's times. It looks like we might be gone, but we also have the place where people can contact you. So, thank you, Kyle and Jimmy and Wilson. We really appreciate you coming and chatting with us about this. I really like components of this one, especially the way you can keep track of things. I can see where it can help the students. I'm kind of thinking it could help my own writing. Yep. So when I'm working on my projects, I'd love to be able to use it to be able to gather information too. So thank you very much. Catherine, any last minute statements or anything going on? We're good?
Nope, not that I can think of. Thank you guys so much.
We want to thank you.
Yes.
This was enormously powerful and enjoyable. Thank you so much.
Excellent. And thank you all for the participants coming in. So appreciate you joining us tonight, and we'll be working on next week. We do these fairly short notice overall. It's kind of really organic that way. So if anybody who is here tonight wants to send us a quick email about topics for the future, love to have the topics from you. Aside from that, have a good evening and stay safe and stay healthy. And we hope to see you again in the future.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.